Uh, Good evening, friends. I know this has been a very lovely evening. The award winners, I'm sure, want to celebrate rather than hear panelists giving boring things about what should be done. But anyway, I think we have a very good panel. What I'm going to propose is that perhaps we start from this side and about 5 minutes for each speaker, roughly. I'm not going to press any bells to stop you, but I'm sure we'll keep within that. And let's focus on what can be done to really raise the standard of government in this country, raise the standard of contact for the citizen, the availability to the citizen of the government. And here, let me give you what I believe is, we have what I call a defective democracy. We have elections, we have a constitution, but we have not really delivered to the citizen. And let me give you my simple test of democracy, is what I call a telephone test of democracy. If you go to most Western countries, let's say United States, an Indian immigrant there will very easily pick up the telephone and ask about the status of his green card or citizenship. And 99% he'll get a fairly rational answer at the other end of the telephone. In India, a first-rate Indian citizen, if he's applied for a passport and his passport is delayed, dare not think about using the telephone to find out what's happening. And therefore, I'm saying, using e-governance, using the web, how do we connect with that citizen is the thought I'd like to leave with you all. Ms. Suri, please.
Thank you. I think if I can start off with the thought that you mentioned, we will, I think, in the next couple of months, inaugurate the TCS-driven passport e-Seva Kendras. And I think the plan is that by the end of next year, we'll have 73 of them around the country. And they will be run in a very different way. It's taken a lot of battles to overcome the resistance from some fairly strongly entrenched interests to take this forward. Not only unions, but security, integrity of data, which is sensitive, and all of that. But I think in this area, Ministry of External Affairs has taken the lead, and we will see some very good results in the next few months. I think it's happening now. The pilots are running in Bangalore and in Chandigarh, and the systems are being tested out. On the issue of use of social media, I think rather than say something, let me share my experience of the kind of problems that you run into when you embark on something which, from a private sector, private citizen's standpoint, seems very rational and easy to do. What inhibits government from doing it more often or more successfully? One is that there is this huge security bugbear. And I'm sorry to say, but in many parts of government, what is the Department of E-Governance and IT, which is a standard fixture, is more concerned about IT security than about the former part. And of course, in ministries like ours, there is security of information which is crucial, and we deal with sensitive subjects. But I think there is also an irrationality with which the fears are presented. And I think a lot of us get browbeaten into accepting irrational constraints on e-governance in the name of security. And I think this is something that perhaps the professionals need to reflect upon, that when we started on this, Suneet, who's sitting there from CDAC, and she was designing our website, I said, the Ministry of External Affairs has a website that is on the NIC server. Let's position ours physically on a different server so that, you know, we nip that particular bug in right there. I would ask people, why are you worried about us having a Facebook page? First, security. I said, if you allow users on your intranet to access to Gmail, then are you any more insecure by going on to YouTube or to Facebook? Because in the year 2010 coming to an end, in South Block, access to YouTube and Facebook is blocked by NIC. So that's just an example of the reality that we deal with. Second concern which used to come across was content, that people will post something nasty on your Facebook page. And I had to say, okay, so what? Somebody will attack you for not issuing a passport in time or for not answering the phone or something. Don't you hear that every day on TV or in the print media or elsewhere? So what's different? And of course, the other side had a bit of an answer saying, no, but that's general to the public. This is personal to you. So we said, all right, we'll take that in our stride and let's move that. The third, which was particularly curious, was people will waste their time on Facebook. And I said, but surely that's a management issue, not a public diplomacy issue by any stretch. But I just thought that I'd share with you that we've tried to accomplish a fair bit in the last 6 months, but there are obstacles that you have to overcome. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that our Foreign Secretary, Mrs. Nirupama Rao, was one solid support for us in what we were doing. And she said, just go ahead, but be careful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Could you please, sir?
Good evening. Let me just take off from what Mr. Puri had just said. One of the things, which I was reminded of reading an article in HBR some time back where it said, 6 things which the IT people in an organization should not decide. And one of this is, what is the level, what should be made available to public and what should not be made available to public. The fact of the matter today is, in the government, most of our IT projects are actually driven by the IT people and not by business domains. And I mean, one thing I'd like to say is, whichever organization or department is the business or the domain people are taking the lead, please do not come in the way. That's point number one. Let me just make a couple of comments and which possibly we need to address when we're looking at using social media in the government. Yeah, some 10 years back when this .com boom came in, e-com was a big buzzword. Everyone went to e-com. But really what happened was that, in the end of it, less than, you have one Amazon or one eBay or one Rediff. We do not see zillions of e-com sites flourishing today. And people were very surprised that why is it that although everyone had a model which we thought would be successful, it did not. Because the general feeling was on the e-com site, you could sell stuff much cheaper, save on the warehousing and all the other transaction costs, and therefore people would actually move on to the e-com world. There's a lot of research which was done, and finally they come up and they said one of the very crucial things when people transact on the web was trust. People go to websites and are ready to buy stuff from websites on which, over a period of time, due to various factors, trust was developed. And today, trust is seen as one single largest factor. People are willing to pay more for a website on which they have trust. Now, government as an agency which has, despite all its shortcomings, has a reasonable, people trust the government today. And to that extent, people are willing to trust the information that rests. And that is where the strength of government as using social media rests. If government comes and responds to something, people inherently trust it. And I think this is something which we should really leverage on. Another thing one of the biggest challenges which I see in terms of using this, especially in India and possibly other places also, is the question of language. I mean, all said and done, less than 5% of people in the country, maybe 10% by now. Incidentally, there are no statistics worthwhile statistics available of how many people in India speak English. But most people don't, and large number of people whom we would want to access has to be in local language. This story is said several times, but the fact is that today computing has not started in the real sense in the local language, and we need to parallelly drive that in a big way to be able to start involving people in the real sense. Otherwise, we would continue to touch a very peripheral segment. Another thing which I thought would be relevant would be, sustainability of the whole social media concept. Today, we need to have understanding. I mean, today, if we start a social media site, I mean, in public diplomacy, it makes so much sense for government to do it. But if you look at Facebook or Twitter and all, they have all evolved over some kind of revenue model, sustainable model. When government wants to take up a cause like this, what should we really be to what extent should government promote this? When should the government, for which all causes should government promote, and for which all causes it should really be funded or based on some revenue model? So these are some of the things. The best part of it is we are seeing a lot of isolated models, sprouting in various parts, and that's the beauty of this whole e-governance effort that is going on. I just want to mention two small initiatives that are going on in Kerala using social media. One is a collaborative effort by the name of Ende Gramam, which is actually a portal developed by the people. It contains only local content and in local language. Ende Gramam translated to English means my village. And this portal totally provides, the content is created by the local community. A set of people are actually trained to put content on the web on an open format. And it has all the news about the village, its basic demography, its basic resources. And one of the interesting things which I always mention is they have something called a labor pool, which, and if you click that site, it has its own classification in terms of music teachers, well diggers, and auto drivers or whatever. And you can go and put your name there and the phone number, so in case anyone needs you. And we have been supporting this initiative. We have provided the web server space, the training, and the editorial team moderating the content that is put on. A lot of people put their local functions there, local level events and all that. It's now been, this portal is available for nearly about 150 local panchayats of Kannur district, and it's now being spread to a few more districts. And a lot of people, there are thousands of articles which have been contributed by the people onto this website. There's several thousands hits. Considering the panchayat portal, I think that's a reasonable number. The second thing which I thought we have been using social media, I'd like to share at this moment is, we saw the tourism department website being recognized today, and I'd like to thank the organizers for that. Most state governments today, and to an extent central government also, is in this effort of promoting India as an investment destination. And we have started using several of the social media channels, including Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, blogs, because Kerala suffers from a huge handicap of people see it as not a very investor-friendly destination. And we wanted to have this slightly, we wanted to keep improving this image. And as part of that, we said, let the people speak out and let's listen from what people are speaking. But one challenge, I think Mr. Puri mentioned this, the huge challenge is, so we have these blogs, we have these sites, and people say a lot of things. We do not have an effective mechanism of analyzing what people are saying and taking corrective action. So one of the things, another thing which we would like to kind of address when you're talking of using social media is when you get this flood of information, when people speak, how do you actually collate and use this information to improve your decision making? But I think this is a wonderful initiative. Compliments to the organizers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think I'll take the issue further. This Web 2.0 technology is a new paradigm. It's a paradigm shift in the domain of connected communities. And it's a big paradigm going to bring about change in the way communities are governed altogether. The journey has just begun. In fact, I was in a conference where Sudhirji was with me, and the 4 issues, which seem to be the only 4 issues about IT being discussed anywhere. One is green IT, second is cloud computing, third is virtualization, And fourth, instead of social networking, fourth is Facebook. Now, I just wanted to emphasize on the fact that Facebook is not all about social networking. Today, Facebook, because I'm saying this because I have prohibited Facebook on through my WebSense server and in GS-WAN intranet. We don't, because it's addictive. I, in fact, have collected data about all my users and the websites that they are using. And I found that whosoever has got, there is a software through which they can go bypass WebSense. And those who go to Facebook are beholden to Facebook. So, but then, why I'm saying this is a nebulous technology, social networking. And the point I'm driving at is that there would be a lot of creative potential. There is a lot of creative potential for business domain leaders to devise programs to use Web 2.0 technology, not entirely through Facebook. There are collaborative social networking programs like Wikipedia. It's different from Facebook. You have Facebook. Twitter is like a broadcasting. Facebook is, in each of this, the bottom line is that user can create content. But thereafter, the usage can go in different directions. And as the technology grows, it is possible to have various other manifestations of the same social networking technology. But it would depend on we users as to how to drive that development. So what I'm saying is, don't limit your outlook to Facebook. Look at all other potential that the technology has. Somebody said, to demolish the middleman or the resistance. There was a question of the resistance and how e-governance or electronics can bridge the gap. Look at the areas where there is this impasse or the people sitting between us and the people, and devise platforms where we can have content from them, use it in a more imaginative manner on different platforms, not essentially Facebook, and it's something which is going to happen. It's something which is bound to happen, and the community has such a huge hunger and desire for remaining connected that it's not possible to stop it. We are moving in an era of connected communities. The challenge is with us in the domains as to how to move it in a positive and a creative way, channelizing the energy of all the people for administering or for managing the communities in a better way. The future, as I foresee, in this user generated content, actually would bring about a change in the model of government itself. The hierarchies are going to diminish. The organizations would flatten. The objectives of the organizations would become the movements of people. Movements of people will pursue these objectives to begin with as supporting the organizations, and slowly, gradually, organizations will keep on contracting, and this people's movement would become the prime organization per se. As a matter of fact, a stage should come when connected community becomes an ideal. There may be no need for government. The people's movement through this technology itself would pursue these objectives and maybe say the death of an organization.
Thank you. 4 points, 4 minutes. First is that we are trying to reach the people through the panchayats. There are 250,000 panchayats in the country, and these we find are the best medium to reach the people. But there are lots of issues of internet connectivity, and we find that now we are exploring the possibility of using the mobile system, mobile network. So the convergence, but mobile network cannot, by itself cannot do the job what internet is doing. So conjunctive use of mobile technology with internet-based technology. We read somewhere about the Ushahidi technology that the Kenyan guy has introduced. I don't know, I somehow feel that he is going to be the Bill Gates of tomorrow. But anyway, that we are experimenting, I am not announcing much now as to how to utilize the two together to resolve. A common man has got mobile handset, but he does not have access to internet in the rural areas very easily. So how the two can be combined, that is point number one. The second thing is what we are finding difficulty. I mean, I am posing this so that the industry leaders are here and activists are here, government officers, senior are here, and they can think of whether these are valid issues, so they can also partake some of the points, issues. And the second is the availability of power. It is very unfortunate that our country, we have to discuss this issue when we are in the 21st century. And of course, we have one extreme of Mr. Ravi Saksena's state, Gujarat, where it is a non-issue. But then, what is the reality of life, at least for some years to come, if not a decade to come, is that we supply, computers, you supply to rural areas, and power, there is no power for hours together. So whether we can have some low-cost alternative power which is driven by natural energy sources like solar energy and so on. So that might make the whole effort more sustainable and not dependent on, that is the third thing is that there is so much scope for improving efficiency in the system, making people happier through making governance transparent and easy to understand, easy to reach by using the technology. We know all very well. But the industry is driven by large players who are looking for large partners. And large business, both sides, that is causing, I think, we are missing out on a lot of scope. Smaller partners, medium-sized partners. So how do you do this? Large partners should have franchisee arrangement with the small partners in terms of supplier side, vendor side, and the user organizations can look for user. Dhirubhai Ambani, when he launched the Reliance, I mean, his mobile was being sold in pawn shops and everywhere, That is how the mobile phones really caught up. He caught hold of, bus conductors, and all kinds of people became the vendors. And then only the mobile, of course. Now the Reliance strategy is different, and that is a different story. So having said all my last point is that public-private partnership. In fact, whenever in such activity, such events I go, I join to say something, but I end up learning 100 times more than what I had to say. So many things I have discovered today, and one of them is the MP Online Limited. I think it's a wonderful initiative. I do not know why it has not caught on, because driving public services on a private platform, so to say, on a private engine, private vehicle, is a far more efficient logically. I mean, we don't have to discuss it too much. Fine. But there should be small, medium to medium, and small to small collaboration also. If the industry can locate, discover such models, and I'm sure we will have a much better life, much faster also we'll get. Thank you very much.
Dirty politician, probably in this entire room. I'm essentially an English literature graduate, but kind of moved into technology. But but moved into technology fairly early, because the fantasy and the magic I saw in literature, I could see in technology. So if you want to identify what magic is, you could kind of look at technology. I also happened to kind of lead the process which culminated in BJP's IT vision document that was released just before the Lok Sabha election. I was the principal author of the document. And our vision was, of course, good governance, smart governance, and really achieving the vision of eGov 2.0. But of course, that presumed many things, all the infrastructure issues that my colleagues here kind of talked about. But today I would like to play the role of a naysayer here and point out some fundamental issues. Of course, we are meant to discuss how do we use social media for government, but let me just take a step back and ask a couple of fundamental questions. What does Web 2.0 mean? And what does eGov 2.0 mean? Now, to many of us, when you say Web 2.0, it means Facebook and Twitter. So, if you do a dipstick and ask what is Web 2.0, somebody will say Facebook, somebody will say Twitter, a third person might say YouTube. And similarly, if you go and ask somebody what is eGov 2.0, they would say, well, when the government starts using Twitter like Obama did, or like our former external affairs ministers did, that is eGov 2.0. But my understanding of technology says it's partially correct, but not fully. Web 0.0 was the website. HTML was invented, the browser was invented, and then you, using a browser and using HTML, you created website, and the purpose was information dissemination. And that was the technology of the early 90s. So if you look at history of IT and governance, you'd find the first governments going online with their website, very simple website, in the early 90s. There is a URL called archive.org, and they have a tool there called the Wayback Engine. What archive.org does is that it kind of keeps a record of all the websites in the world, as much as they could find, and all the changes thereafter. So if you want to look at the Government of India website or the Government of US website in the year 1992, you could look at the archive.org, type in your us.gov or whatever, and go and look at it. But that was really Web 0.0 technology. Web 1.0 was about transactions. So you had Amazon.com and you had all these transaction companies, and they went online. And Web 2.0 is about collaboration. Unfortunately for us, we are still stuck in Web 0.0. Many of our government departments, our governmental agencies, governmental functionaries are still yet to have an online presence. So we are there. That's the reality. And on the other hand, there are this little privileged few of us who have started using Web 2.0 and are kind of dreaming of Web 2.0. But I wonder how much feasible that is. Today, we haven't yet automated governmental transactions. Any of you could go to your state website and see if you can apply for a driving license online. If you can apply for your ration card online. So when we have not yet completed Web 2.0, I think it's a little premature for us to talk of Web 2.0 or eGov 2.0, because if you try to do that, tomorrow you will have 100 online petitions saying that this doesn't work and that is the problem and this, so on and so forth. So collaboration comes only after you finish the transaction phase. I think there was a very important question raised, that how do we use these Web 2.0 tools for government, if at all? I had the privilege of attending a seminar just about 10 days back in the city of Genoa, Italy. It is called the Young Leaders Conference, where about 50 young leaders cutting across disciplines from about 25 different countries assembled in Genoa to talk about innovation in technology, Web 2.0, and government. And there, we had this very senior bureaucrat from the United Kingdom, who is a part of the Prime Minister's office there and the Office of Information Dissemination. And she was explaining how they use it, and maybe that's something I'd like to share. Now, say, for example, whenever they want to bring in a new act, a new piece of legislation, What they started doing was put that legislation online, and they would then put up a discussion board and allow people to discuss. And over time, what they found was that people would give some crazy ideas, and it would be millions of ideas, and you do not know what to do with it. So the next phase, what they did was that let us have a structured discussion and let us have an unstructured discussion. So you take a piece of legislation, for example, and break it down into questions with yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. So there's a piece of legislation, you've broken it down to 100 questions, you put those 100 questions online with fixed answers, yes, no, or I don't care. And that's how you get some structured feedback, that 50% people want this, or 30% people want this, 60% people oppose this, so on and so forth. And then you put up a discussion board where you let people give unstructured responses, and you get both structured and unstructured feedback. So that's an example that she shared with me. Now, why I think eGov 2.0 is important. It's something we may not be able to accomplish right now, but that's a vision we should strive forward, because it responds or it answers the very essence of democracy. If the essence of democracy is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, it's eGov 2.0 and the social media tools that allows that government and the governed, that relationship to flourish, that relationship to kind of deepen. So till today, there was the governors and they were the governed, and there was no way they could have a one-to-one relationship. So now suddenly, this technology allows for us to deepen that relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. Last of the speaker, so to kind of cut it short. Actually, one thing comes to my mind. When I started doing this stuff in the state government, and I'm doing it for the past 6 to 7 years, the important thing that I noted was that they always told me, the technologists and the consultants that came to me from all the big 5 consulting companies, that starts from broadcast, what Mr. Bora was saying, and goes to interact and then to transact. I kept on wondering, does this broadcast mean something, So I did a thorough analysis of the websites of the state government, and was kind of bewildered to find that we don't qualify to actually have good quality broadcast content. For example, are the schemes, all of them, available on the website? Is information, for example, at the height of the swine flu problem, we were trying to understand that is the mitigation strategy available in Hindi with graphical contents, so that we can tell people that, look, if somebody is bitten by a snake, what are the steps that need to be taken? If you are in a car and you are having a heart attack, what do you do? I think probably it is not there, and in local language it is simply not available. For example, if you do a Google on these kind of stuff, you may get something in English, but not in Hindi, not at all. Government sits on a mind-boggling amount of information. For example, I was there the last week in a central library. Many of you might not be aware that the Sanchi Stoop as it stands today was a ruin. And Sir John Marshall, the great Sir John Marshall, with the aid of the Begum of Bhopal, reconstructed it. And he wrote a book which got printed, and he had made some sketches. Absolutely fabulous. And there is just this one book which contains the chronicle of everything down from the first day to the last when he reconstructed it. He brought in all the brick by brick, block by block, he brought in from different places and assembled it. Mind-boggling information. And the problem is that this book is being eaten by moths and by termite, and that's the last thing that is there. Can it not be put onto the web so that it can be used by posterity? And this is again the government run library. Again, I went to Jabalpur, and you might be also aware of the famous Pindari hunter, the Colonel William Sleeman. Now he in his hand wrote in English and as well in Hindi. He wrote about Pindaris that, and the land that they used to traverse, Jameen aabsar nahi, vraksh faldar nahi, aadmi wafadar nahi. And it is written in Hindi, beautiful handwriting. Now all that is going. What I am trying to say is that, look, I have started a fabulous website, MP Online, which is now getting about 50 lakh users every day. Quite happy about it. The Indian Railway has a very interesting interactive website. But you know, before all this is forgotten and goes down the drain, and whatever technology we are talking of kind of does whatever it can, we need to preserve all this and put it somewhere so that, you know, it can be used for posterity. You know, that is the most important thing that comes to my mind. The other thing is that there is another part of divide. Take the case of Madhya Pradesh, for example. What is happening is that we have talked about some of the good initiatives and we have got awards and other stuff for doing those things. The other thing was a very small initiative. We thought that, look, how does a person who cannot read, who cannot write, interact with the government? Now that barrier has to be broken by the voice. Now there were many interesting initiatives that were awarded today. What we did was we started with a small call center. And what we ensured was that the call center does not remain to be the caller calls in and I record and forget about it. I call back the citizen 100% and tell him that your problem can be rectified and it had been rectified. Are you satisfied? We are getting about 5,000 to 6,000 calls. Because of the fear of not being able to respond to a larger audience, we are keeping it small. But right now, we were from 30 to 40%, we are able to reach 96%. So whenever we talk of technology, we must also think of the person who cannot read and write and who's afraid of contacting the government, being able to interact with the government. Now this initiative is almost like 2 years in existence. And I think probably, you know, when we muster the courage, we are going to increase it. And we are asking the question, and I think probably everybody sitting in this room would ask this question, that you are traveling on a highway and you have met with an accident. Who do you call? Now what that one number is which can save your life. You know, you call 100, it doesn't respond. It would not. So you call your friend who kind of tries to arrange, if I am a bureaucrat, you know, I will call a collector. I would call the principal secretary or a secretary of mine who would then call a collector, who would then call the SP, and the help arrives. Now, can it not be that I call a number and I get help? There is a burglar in my house. I am not able to reach the control center of the police. So can I call this number? Who then takes care of this? So that is the other idea that I had, and I thought that I must share with you. Thank you very much.
Well, my colleagues have all talked of a wide variety of things. It's been very interesting discussion. We have, just to take two of those issues, my friend talked of the fact that we may not have power. Sir, okay, I think we have no power here. So we had this issue of whether we can go on to Web 2.2 or 2.4 on the one side, and the other reality of life that you may not even have power. I must confess that sitting in the capital city of this country and being in the Information Commission, we've gone fileless in our office. We have no files. And we've been talking to NIC and saying, look, we've got this on an intranet. Can we put it on the NIC website? And for the last 3 months, I've had various people from NIC come. And the truth is, nobody's been able to guarantee me 100% uptime on internet in the capital city for a Government of India office of the Information Commission. This is the truth. 100% uptime for internet is so far not possible. I mean, they've said we are putting this line, we are doing that line, we are doing this, but it's not really happened. So I think there are a wide variety of realities we looked at, from how in Kerala and Gujarat things are being handled, how the foreign ministry is handling this. But I think there is a lot of hope. And I would just like to end with one thing. What may happen 5 years down the line, great. But perhaps, can we find a simple business solution where any citizen using a mobile asks for information and somebody accesses it from the internet and gives it to him? This is not very difficult. And I think if you were to try this model across the country, because perhaps over 50% of the country's population seems to be using mobiles. So if we can do this very simple thing, no great technology, a business model whereby a citizen calls a phone number, somebody looks at the internet and gives him the information that he wants. Thank you very much. And I must congratulate the organizers of this event, Ravi and all, and on behalf of all of us, thank them for this excellent evening.